Hello there. What is going on, everybody? We are back with a double critical, and we are going to be talking Star Wars Armada today. I am on board the bridge of the USS Crabbok. It's the most crabtacular ship we have ever seen. But yes, we are here, and we're gonna have a good time today. Be sure to like the video, share the stream, leave your comments in. Let me know what's going on with you guys today. Today it's been a pretty big, interesting weekend. I actually played in my first Armada tournament since lockdown today, which was awesome. It was it's just a 2-round tournament. A lot of the tournaments that we used to do here are kind of in that 2-round style where it's basically more like tournament practice, right? It's you play competitively, and they're doing points, and my buddy Chandler's got a great system going on right now, keeping track of points. Like, they do a tournament every month, and then when certain people get up to a certain amount of points, they can win prizes, and it's a really cool thing. We play over at Campus Cards and Games 2 in Orlando, Florida, and hopefully it won't be the last. I had a great time today doing that. So I'm super excited to talk Armada today. And if you guys are following me on social media at all, I've been posting some like pictures of the fleet. I brought out some of the Rebel Blue fleet today. I know it's running Radis on a Starhawk, and it was awesome. It was really awesome. I've never done that before. I've kind of thought about it a little bit, but it's pretty impressive. I will say that much. Pretty impressive. But yeah, so I want to talk about today. I wanted to talk about Flotillas a little bit. How about that TikTok? That's right. So we are on. I'm on TikTok now. I've been branching out on social media a little bit more. I started out. It was just Facebook and Twitter, and then I started doing Instagram, and now I'm on TikTok too. So I put a little TikTok video of the new fleet. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. It's the problem I have with TikTok is I go on there and upload stuff, and then I start looking at stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that's really, really funny. Peter asks, is there going to be a bat rep? So not in the normal form, but patrons, if you're a patron, there's already, if you're A-wing level or above, there's already the video's already up. It's so what I do is I do a tournament report usually when I'm playing in a tournament, because I can't really film, all throughout a game when I'm playing in a tournament. It could be a distraction. Other people could also prolong the game. Games are timed and things like that. So usually I'll just get like the beginning and the end. Like, hey, here's like at the beginning of the day, like, here's the fleet that I'm running. All right, here's my first opponent. Here's what they're running, and here's setup. And and then after the battle, like, all right, here's kind of what happened. Here's what went right. Here's what went wrong. And so I do kind of like that. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of how a build will fly in multiple games. So I did capture a couple of extra moments, because there were some pretty cool moments. There were some, I think each of my games today had some pretty epic moments. I mean, honestly, it was a really fun build to fly. I might tweak it a little bit, but it probably will not be the last time I fly this build, because it's one of my favorite builds now. I need to change something though. I learned a few interesting things about the gravity rift that makes it maybe work a little bit less spectacularly with Radis, because when you deploy within range 1 to 2 of a gravity rift, your speed must be set to 0. So that was real fun, because I was like, oh man, that was lovely. So that happens today. We talked a little bit about Flotillas, though, and it's interesting because there were a lot of today. I looked at all the factions, and that's one of the things I think where Flotillas has an interesting discussion point, in that only 2 of the factions even have Flotillas right now, and we're entering a big long kind of time where we're not going to see new content for a while. Presumably, we don't know for sure, but yeah, so it's like, are we going to even get Flotillas for Clone Wars factions, or is that like something that they will do? Talking to a lot of Armada players today for the first time in a long time, like face to face, it was it was pretty cool, and it was enlightening to kind of just interact with people. But I think there's a lot of people wondering like what is going to happen with the flotillas going forward. Is that going to be like one of their priorities? And we really don't know right now. And so I think it leads for an interesting double critical style discussion on if flotillas are going to get the same treatment that the Rebels and Empire got. If flotillas are going to get new things, and that's some different things that we're going to talk about. But also, are they going to happen at all? And what kind of timeline are we looking at? We really have nothing to go on, and a lot of the speculation that I tend to do is usually based on trends and analysis, and it's hard to do that right now because with the switch from FFG to AMG, everything that we've got with Wave 10 is all stuff that was designed by FFG. It's all the stuff that the old crew, the previous crew, worked on, created, envisioned, and made happen. And so, like moving forward, I think we're at a point where everything that comes out, that gets announced and comes out will be AMG stuff. I don't think there was another holdover wave from FFG. Just yet, I don't think so. I think we might have gotten some hints as to that. All the other games have gotten hints so far and leaks and spoilers and reveals and things like that. So I don't really think we're going to get anything too crazy with that regard. But so I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen because there's really no AMG could do anything, and we don't have a reference on how they're going to do things. One thing that I would love though is if they approach Armada a little bit more with that Marvel Crisis Protocol mindset, and from a standpoint of content coming out rapidly. Like, granted, I don't mean rapidly like 2 expansions every month, kind of like Marvel Crisis Protocol tends to do, but I mean rapidly like a little bit faster than we've seen. Maybe more than just one wave per year would be great. And I'm also curious if they're going to be basically bringing the entire wave at once, or if they're going to be spreading out those ships. We've seen Wave 10 in the United States have every single ship kind of spread out to a different release date. It's really interesting to kind of speculate on whether or not that was deliberate, or if that was separated on purpose to kind of spread everything out, or if it's just accidental. So, I've heard arguments that say, maybe they just did this accidentally. Maybe they just wanted to spread it out because Armada's not getting anything new for a while, and they want to spread it out as much as they can to kind of make the gap of new content feel less significant. If these had all come out in January like they were originally supposed to, and then at first it was January, then it was February, either January or February, we would have them all in hand for a couple of months by now, and we'd be starting to get that stale feeling, I think. And so I think by delaying everything, they have kind of prolonged the stale feeling. And I don't think that's a problem, but I don't think that was all completely deliberate, especially since other places in the world got everything the same day, and the United States got everything staggered. I think it was just shipping problems, and those things happen. So it is what it is. But I'm happy to have new ships. I like the way that the Clone Wars factions tend to feel, but one thing that they don't have is flotillas. So let's talk a little bit about flotillas today, because there's a lot that we can talk about. So first off, I am not a big fan of the 2 flotilla limit. I have talked about that in some of my videos before, and part of my reasoning for that is a little bit selfish, and in that I had bought 3 Gazantes, and then when that 2 flotilla limit came out, I wasn't really allowed to use all 3 anymore, at least for tournament games, and usually that's how I tend to run things. So I wasn't a big fan of that because it did impact me a little bit. But that's more my personal bias. So I just want you to know that going in, that was my predisposition to it. And we got ourselves a super chat from Jason Adkins. What's going on, Jason? I appreciate the channel support, man. Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate the super chat. You are my hero today, Jason, fist bump. All right. Well, at any rate, he says reprints are happening, so there is that. Imperial light cruiser and some Legion stuff back in stock. That is true. I've even seen some people getting their Armada upgrade card collection. Pictures of those have been showing up online. Reprints do happen. They don't happen that fast. But at any given point, there is probably one ship that's out of stock everywhere. One time it was Gladiators. I think it's been MC-30s lately. It used to be the Imperial Star Destroyers. I've seen, the Starhawks were out of stock. Architons have always been out of stock. They come in for a little bit, then they're out of stock again. There's just certain... I think the only ship that's never been out of stock was the Victory Star Destroyer. I think that's the only one that we've always had way more than we ever needed. That's one of those ships that could really use some love. Maybe that should be a good episode. And let me know if you guys do it, whether you're watching this live with us right now or tonight, or if you are watching another time. Let me know what you guys think of like future episodes of Double Crit. Like, what should we kind of brainstorm on? I know that there's some people that would like to see the Victory Star Destroyer get maybe a points reduction or get some changes and things like that. I have mixed emotions on things like that as well. But so I want to get back to the flotilla discussion because there were some problems with the way flotillas used to be once upon a time. You could put your commander on them. You could have a lifeboat. They could just fly off into the distance. You could have squadrons with relay. You could have like Darth Vader on a flotilla off in the corner of the map, and you'd have 134 points of squadrons just going crazy with relay and going nuts. And you had almost no risk to your fleet by doing things like that. So you could have lots of flotillas, so like a lot of those changes. Relay was changed. Flotillas didn't count towards you being tabled, which was very, very good. And you also had the real big hard cap of 2 flotillas per faction. I thought that the hard cap of 2 flotillas per faction wasn't needed. I thought the other 2 changes were sufficient. But I've also brought it up in the Armada Discord, and I've talked with some people about it, and I've been presented with some good counter arguments for that, such as, well, if you're running, for example, if you're running all Gazantes, with the red attack die, and they're all doing concentrate fire, you can get like a really, really high amount of damage, especially if you're running like maybe one of the new commanders. And so like, okay, there are options like that could be a little bit insane. So imagine, for example, you're running General Ramadi. Obstructed attacks. Now you get an extra die. Now you've got all those Gazantes. You got them lined up. That one in the front kind of turns sideways. All the rest are obstructed shots. And everybody does concentrate fire. 3 dice. You're running like 13 ships or something like that. Kind of crazy. And then everybody's got scatter. Obviously, that you couldn't do quite that many because you would have to have at least 1 non-flotilla ship. So maybe you have a raider with Ramadi on there or something like that. So I could see that being maybe something of a feels bad. But I don't know. I guess I'd probably want to try and face that and see if it was as bad as it really seemed. Because sometimes a fleet or a build or something that you see ends up not being as nasty as it seemed at first. Maybe you get in front of all these Gazantes with your rest of your fleet, ram them, and then they all stuck ramming each other, and they all just blow up. Like things like that might happen too. So maybe it's high risk, high reward. I don't know. Of course, you do want to kind of avoid play experiences that turn out to be unfun, and so maybe that I could see the argument that maybe somebody running too many flotillas could be unfun. So maybe that's the argument. But I'm not a big fan of the hard cap of 2. I don't know, but I think there's ways around that. Also, I think there are certain types of things that they could do to kind of fix that. For example, if we want to see more flotillas in the game, what about if they put a flotilla title in there, a unique title that says, this flotilla does not count, or this ship does not count against your limit of 2 flotillas. Then all of a sudden that would allow you to have 3 flotillas. It would be semi-hard capped at 3 because that title would be unique, so you couldn't run 2 of them, unless, of course, they made a whole different title. Unless that became like a keyword that kind of sometimes showed up on Flotilla titles. That would give you more of a restricted amount. Like, I really like the idea of Dornian gunships, but I think they would have to be Flotillas. They're just too small. The Dornian gunship is much smaller than a CR-90. It's much closer to a GR-75 size. So I expect whenever they do the Dornian gunship, it'll be a combat flotilla. And that's when you get into, okay, well, if you could run a combat flotilla, could you run 13 of them in a build? Well, there's some issues with that, and I want to talk about those, because a lot of people jump on this assumption that all flotillas have to be super cheap. And I do not. I balk at that assumption. Just because a Dornian gunship is at the size to show up as a flotilla, doesn't mean that it has to cost what a GR-75 costs. Suppose a Dornian gunship is a flotilla, and you got 2 ships on a small base, and maybe you got a decent little firing arc for a flotilla. Maybe it's 2 red and a blue out the front, something like that. I don't think it would be exactly that, because that would be too close to what the Hammerhead could do. But I think it should be somewhere around Hammerhead points, maybe a little bit less. At least probably around like 38 points at least. Depending on, maybe it's got 4 dice in the front. Maybe it's got 1 red, 1 blue, and 2 black. Maybe it's got only 1 red, but maybe it's got like 3 flak. Maybe, again, it really depends on what the specific criteria are, what the specific armament loadout for Dornian gunships are. But if that's the case, if you got a really heavy gunship that's a flotilla, I don't think you have to worry about people running 13 of them if you just simply make the ship more expensive. And the problem you have to run into is what happens if it's so expensive that I would just rather take a Hammerhead or something to that effect. Because kind of from a certain point of view, I think you could easily, and this is another reason I want FFG, or rather AMG, to start releasing acrylic base replacement kits and alternate colored acrylic bases, because I would love to right now just simply swap out a Hammerhead for a little like flotilla base of Dornian gunship, right? Like just say this is the Dornian gunship. It's obviously you'd probably be better off just running a single Dornian gunship on there and have it just be really, really small. But that'd be a good kind of way to just mechanically run the Hammerhead, but add flavor to your fleet. Because sometimes there's a lot of ships that we want to have because they look cool and we've seen them on screen and all of these things. But maybe they're not adding a whole lot to the game. And I love diversity. I love having, especially for the rebels, because they're known to be a ragtag type of fleet. I'm always looking forward to seeing what new types of customs we can swap in. And I always wanted them to be separate expansions, but if we can't think of anything really new for it to add, it becomes tough. Like if we added a new dice color or something like that, then that could definitely be an opportunity. If they added green dice to Star Wars, or purple dice to Star Wars Armada, here could be a great purple dice delivery platform. And so like that would, and maybe that's something that they do. Maybe that's something that AMG does. Maybe they add, like, just like how Salvo added a pretty significant new mechanic. I think adding a new dice color to Star Wars Armada could be freaking awesome. It could be really, really awesome. So I don't know. I'd like to see something like that. In general, it's tough to say exactly where it should be, what you should do. Maybe a purple die is one that has 3 accuracies on there, and 1 hit, and then 3 blanks. So you have a pretty good chance of getting an accuracy, but also a pretty good chance of getting a blank. I don't know. I feel like that's maybe the only empty design space in there. Something that's going to give you accuracy, but nothing else. Or very little else. But like having the 1 hit side on there means you could still potentially turn a die to a side with a hit for some certain other effects that happen, but it wouldn't have any doubles on there. I don't know. And then we could do some interesting things with it. There could be you could more easily have ships with 3 anti-squadron battery, Granted, there are some that have that already, but there's very few. It'd be a lot easier to make a Dornian gunship have a triple anti-squadron battery if one of them is a purple die and has very low chance of actually doing damage. You know, things like that. That would be something that I think would be kind of cool. It'd also be a die with perhaps no crits, right? So that's something that we could explore, that maybe if we wanted to add new types of flotillas, they'd have to add something that the faction doesn't have already, at least not exactly. And of course, there's always the idea of, well, what if we just add a new upgrade type? You know, you could do something sort of like that. But, you know, it's easier to do this for the Rebels because they've got a lot of small ships, a lot of background ships, of course, the Dornian gunship. The Empire has a harder time trying to add new flotillas. I do think we've seen a couple of Gazanti variants. You know, you had that Gazanti from The Mandalorian, which I think was basically just a standard Gazanti, but just in higher definition because we saw it on screen. But you also have that Gazanti from Star Wars Rebels, that deep space reconnaissance listening ship. I feel like that one could potentially work either as a small ship or as a new flotilla. It was a little bigger than the normal Gazanti, but I don't know if it was that much bigger to justify being a full-blown small ship. So that could be an alternate type of flotilla. And the other thing about adding new flotillas is it gives you this really interesting choice to make. Like, wait, I was going to run 2 Gazanti. I was going to run Slicer Tools. What if this new flotilla doesn't have fleet support? Do I really want to take one and then limit my, you know, the utility that other flotillas have? So, you know, it becomes tougher with something like this listening ship. Like, well, what would they have? Maybe they're going to have 2 fleet support on one ship. Or maybe they'll come up with, you know, another type of flotilla that has a new upgrade. Especially if they wanted to do some type of cloaking mechanics or whatever. I think, you know, if you do the stealth ship from Clone Wars, that'd be a small ship, so I don't think that would work for flotillas. But there's definitely options. There's definitely options out there. What about the Clone Wars, right? I think the Republic's got a lot of real small ships, a lot of shuttles, a lot of different types of things like that could work. Everything from like the Taylander shuttle to stuff that we've seen in a lot of the stuff we've seen in both the Clone Wars and in Star Wars Rebels. You know, I think the Republic's got options. The Separatists, though, those you know, if you guys are paying attention to X-Wing, Separatists just got the Trident class assault ship, the Squid, and that one is perfect, especially since they have all this artwork for it already. I think that is, you know, one indication that those might be coming. If they've already got the artwork commissioned for it, then that makes it much easier to justify beginning to develop something for a game. So, granted, they have said that artwork is one of the easiest parts, so that doesn't mean that we're getting it right. They did have Gazantis, right? I mean, I would like to see something new, and Separatists could use Sea Rocks as well. The Separatists absolutely could. And so that's, I think, one of the things that people initially thought, like, well, Separatists would get Sea Rocks. I had said that in almost all of my prediction type videos until then, of course, we get this Trident announced. And what, isn't that interesting? It makes me think, well, maybe the Separatists could get multiple, you know, multiple flotillas. The Sea Rock seems like it would be just a lot more, you know, maybe a blend between the Gazanti and the GR75, because the Sea Rock's like, I think it's a type of Gazanti. But yeah, so, you know, maybe that'll come out first, and maybe that'll be a Separatists thing. Maybe they'll be the only faction to have 2 flotilla types. And this would be a good time to have like some kind of unique title to say, hey, this card doesn't count against your flotilla limit. So I want to give you guys an interesting idea, because flotillas are also the Trident, though, in Armada would be epic table presence. Oh yeah, absolutely. Here's my idea a little bit. You know, kind of going back recently and watching that episode of Clone Wars, where the squid ships actually do, you know, attack Kamino from under the water. They all came out of debris from other ships. So here is my idea. If you wanted to have a bunch of squid, I think the Separatists should be able to do a squid type of attack. And the way I think that you do this is you have maybe a offensive retrofit or a defensive retrofit or something like that. You have an upgrade that goes onto a ship, and it's called like debris, and maybe it triggers after you take damage or something like that. I'm not sure, but basically it puts a token under the ground into the battle that at the beginning of the next turn becomes a flotilla, but does not count against your flotilla list limit because it's just an upgrade. It's not, you don't have to include the whole points. So I mean, it would be an expensive upgrade too. It would be not the full cost of the flotilla, but close to it. And it would be a flotilla, but you would bring it in with no upgrades, right? So think of like a trident cargo bay, right? And maybe it's 17 points. For a single upgrade on a ship. Maybe 15 points, because you're not going to be able to start the game with it. It doesn't give you the other advantages that a full-blown ship do. And you can even lower it, too, by saying maybe they come in without scatter. Right? And that's assuming they have scatter, because everybody assumes that, well, not everybody, but a lot of folks might assume that any future flotillas to get added to the game must copy the design philosophy behind the other two flotillas, and that they're small ships that are super, super cheap, have fleet support, have an evade and a scatter. So many of those things are subject to change, and none of those are required for flotilla. All the thing of this is for a flotilla is that it's 2 ships on a base, and that could even be changed to be multiple ships on a base. So we might get like a 3-ship flotilla at some point. Matt McLaren says Trident could give out raid tokens and boarding parties, etc. Absolutely, I think that would be good upgrades for a Trident to have. Is the weapons team and the support team together, so that weapons team and offensive retrofit together, so that this way they can do that. It might be a flotilla with no weapons. It might just be anti-squadron, or they might have black dice only. They might have 1 black die in each zone. I have long since wanted something crazy like to have a ship that has a strong, like its rear arc is its strongest arc. So I could see them doing that. I also think it would be pretty funny if they were given a turbo laser upgrade, because imagine putting spinal armament on them. I think that would be really fun. And I think that could work. I would want to test that out and see how well a flotilla with spinal armament works, because that's going to drastically increase the cost, right? Especially if it's a ship that I don't know, maybe it's a ship that maybe you could start with 2 of them, then have the upgrade on a couple more ships that warps in some more. Be a great way for AMG to sell lots of flotillas too, because when you put a limit on something, I wonder, like with Marvel Crisis Protocol, there's a whole lot of stuff that they probably could get more sales if something were different, but like here, like you can only use 1 of any given character, so they're not probably selling very many people doubles of a lot of characters in Marvel Crisis Protocol, outside of those painters that want to do like multiple versions of Wolverine or something like that. So, but here, if you have ways for people to run more than 2 of a certain flotilla, I think that's just a great way to do that. So we have these break apart debris clouds that leave a token behind after the ship gets either damaged or destroyed. Maybe like every time if it's got at least 2 damage cards, it can drop one of these tokens, or if it's destroyed, it can drop one of these tokens, and it becomes a flotilla, and it comes in at the start of the next turn, and you might even make it to where the thing can be attacked with like flak dice, but give it like 3 health, so it's like there's like now all of a sudden a TIE fighter on the ground. If they can blow it up this turn, it won't form into the thing, otherwise it will, right? Like I think that would be a fun way to do things like that. But yeah, see it, like give it some kind of ability to latch on to enemy ships and drill and just do damage. I think it'd be really, really cool. And if you need like a title card, like a generic title or something like that, you could make it to where that has to go on, like, you can bring this flotilla into the game, but it has that title on it, and that's what lets it latch on. But I think bringing naked flotillas into the game, through an upgrade like that, if they have some firepower, could be really interesting. It'd have to be a crazy expensive upgrade though. Like I'm talking like 15 points or more for a single upgrade. I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be really fun. But I'm really interested to see how something like that's going to work. What about medium base flotillas, right? I feel like that's another really cool way that we could go. Larger flotillas than small bases. So and I want to talk about this for a little bit. But Peter here says, going back to the new die color, since all the dice are different weapon types, what about a laser cannon, low damage and range 1, high accuracy and rate of fire? Yeah, that's... I guess laser cannons are different than turbo lasers. I feel like laser cannons kind of fit into the ion cannon type of category in that they're not high damage, but they're high accuracy. And they're consistent because there's no blanks. I feel like blue dice kind of fit that category. Yeah, so it's tough, right? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how you do that. Because if it's going to be high, I don't know how you come up with high rate of fire unless you're adding lots of... Maybe you have 2 double hits but no criticals. Like maybe that's the thing, is it cannot crit. Or you just come up with a new symbol as a whole. Maybe there's a new die that shows up and that instead of doing damage, it does something else. Like maybe there's a die face, like you've already got accuracy, critical, and then hit. What if there's a die face that strips a token? What if there's a die face that assigns a raid token? That could be crazy, but what if that happens, right? Like there's a lot of things like that you could do. I want to say Rune Wars did something like that. Like they had a lot of different effects on their dice, so you could roll like a damage and a surge to do something else or something like that. Legion could do stuff like that too. You have like these multi-symbol dice, and you can get a lot of different things going in there. And so, it's a pretty interesting idea. So I like the idea of I like the idea of having a new dice color, but I also don't want to get into every wave of Armada introducing something drastically different. Like Salvo was a big deal. The Onager was a big deal. Because it had that that ignition attack, but then with the next 2 waves, we didn't get too much stuff that was like drastically new. I mean, we got new factions, so that was, but I mean, like it didn't in a 1.5 rule set, but that wasn't like the ships. Like I want to avoid like every new ship like having its own entire new like rule set. Like, oh, well, like what if every ship that came out had like added its own new color of dye or something like that, or like that would really conflate the game, and it would end up being also really more difficult for players to come back to. And you kind of want, like, what I like about like Armada 1.5 too is that when somebody who hasn't played Armada in years comes back in, you can kind of be like, okay, there's a slight rules change. Basically, evade is a little better now, and gosh, what else is there? Like there's basically like 3 changes from Armada. You can only have 4 named squadrons with defense tokens. Evade's a little bit better now, and shoot, I don't know. I think, is that it? That's one of the... Oh, and then pass tokens, right? We got rid of some stuff. You can't pass from upgrades anymore. You just got... I actually used some pass tokens in a game today. I actually got 2 pass tokens because I had only 3 ships, and I went up against a 5-ship fleet. Well, it was second player, and I got 2 pass tokens, and they worked perfectly. It was exactly what I was looking for. Oh, so Peter says 1 hit and 4 accuracy. So that's kind of similar to what I was talking about before with the, multiple accuracies and only a single damage side, and then a whole lot of blanks too. So, that could be something that that's not a bad idea to add to the game. it would allow bigger dice pools, but they're not necessarily going to be more damage. So, and I like rolling fistfuls of dice. I definitely do. But then again, making new dice, it makes it hard, because what if somebody is going to do concentrate fire, then need another one of those dice? Do you include one die with every version of that ship? You know, now if somebody wants to concentrate fire and add that color of dice, so they have to add, you know, they have to buy a second version of that ship, or just kind of memorize the character, you know, or memorize the, you know, what was showing on the die, and then go back and forth from that. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of interesting things they could do. Then again, they could put the double critical on a die, like these up here. All right, I would love to see a die with a double critical, and maybe get something like Salvation to be able to shoot them forward. Eddie Hayes, how's it going? Yes, you did catch a live one. We were talking about Flotillas in Star Wars Armada. I did go through most of my bullet points and the different things that I wanted to talk about already with the Flotillas. But yeah, I'd really like combat Flotillas, and I'd love for them to take some different steps, some different imaginative steps with with coming up with more Flotillas. I know I've heard some people say that they did not want to see the Clone Wars even get Flotillas. They certainly don't have to right now. You know, between the consulars options and then the hard cells options, they don't have to. They built them well enough that they can get by without Flotillas right now. You know, that's could be neat to run a flotilla as a meat shield next to a big ship, so an attacker only hits the flotilla instead of their intended target. Oh, so you mean something that maybe a title? If this obstructs an attack, maybe it reduces it by more than 1 damage. Maybe the attacker removes 2 dice instead of 1. So you're like, all right, well, I don't want to shoot through this guy because I'm going to lose 2 dice. You know, or something like that. That would be interesting. I wonder I wonder how that would work with Ramadi. You know, or I mean, you could just say, you know, attacks that this ship obstructs cannot be made. Like that seems a little bit too much, though. I like the idea of just giving you a little nudge in the direction instead of forcing people into that direction. So yeah, I think that's a cool idea. It's a lot of cool titles. If you guys have ever been to Crabbok.com, I had made a what I called a nunchuck expansion a while back, and I had put new titles for every ship in the game. I believe this was pre-Wave 8, so this was one of the first big free content drops that I made over on Crabbok.com. So we've still got that there. It can be fun to kind of just go through them and look at some of the ideas, because I think I made like at least 3 titles for just about every ship. I wanted the ships, and that's just something I really hope they do. It'd be fun for the existing flotillas, but it'd be fun for all the ships. Like even if they never made another expansion or whatever, if we never got any more ships, but we still got more titles, commanders, officers, upgrades, things like that, there'd be so many new possibilities. And so, for what it's worth, I would love for them to start doing more linked upgrades, like how boarding teams require weapons teams and gunnery, or weapons teams and your offensive retrofit. I would love to see upgrades that use ion cannon and turbo laser linked together. All right, like wouldn't that be amazing? Like if you start to look at some of the things that the Victory has. You know, I'm jumping to Victory Star Destroyer right now because that was something that people talk about from time to time. It's generally seen as one of the not good ships, although I think if you give it the Harrow title, it becomes fantastic. But yeah, what would happen if we looked at the Victory and said, hey, you know what, ships that have both a turbo laser and an ion cannon, can do all this, or maybe you made a triple linked upgrade, offensive retrofit, ion cannon, and turbo laser, and used all of those. Like, wouldn't that be cool? Like, you'd be denying a whole lot of other stuff, but it's a great way to give like certain ships the often upgrade capability, without having to be so blatant as saying Victory title or something like that. And you could do that. You could make turbo laser upgrades that are Victory only, and you could do things like that. I'd rather not do that as much, because that's just like then I feel like I have to like sort them in a different place, and and find a different way to do storage for cards like that. But you could do that for flotillas also. It'd be pretty cool if there was a flotilla. What if there was a way to increase your flotilla cap, but you removed their scatter, right? Because I don't think all future flotillas have to have scatter anyway. I would love to see, like cargo ships show up in the game. Maybe real cheap, and flotillas, maybe they have no weapons at all, but maybe they have some kind of minor support, right? I think that would be fun. Okay, maybe they could do stuff kind of like strategic. Maybe they're about 20 points and they can move objective tokens around, and that's it. And you're thinking to yourself, do I really want to spend 20 points on this when I could just put a Lambda out there? Or maybe I've already got my squadrons full, and then I'm going to put this other, maybe it doesn't have scatter. Maybe it's got a redirect, and maybe it's got an evade, and maybe it doesn't have evade. Not all flotillas have to have scatter, and not all flotillas have to be on a small base. I'd love to see larger base flotillas too. Flotillas break the activation mechanic of the game, and we finally got that fixed through errata and version 1.5. Anything we do to expand the use of flotillas must take that into account. Well worded, Mr. John Smith. Very well worded. I appreciate the balance in your tone and the way that you kind of addressed it all, because I agree that they do have to take that into account. So I think higher points is one thing. If there's a flotilla that's not limited for whatever reason, maybe it's maybe there's a title for it that makes it it doesn't count against your thing. You don't want unlimited flotillas to cost 18 points like like your GR75s do. But if they cost 40 points, and maybe they provide some significant value to your fleet, well now all of a sudden, with a 40-point flotilla plus the upgrades I'm going to put on, maybe I'm spending 50 or more points on now all of a sudden that's not something that I can spam quite that much. What if there's a flotilla that costs 70 points? Now are you like, whoa, I don't know if I want to bring more than one of these, So bring flotilla lifeboats back, says John. No, thank you. He's just kidding. No, that would, that was not a good thing. It would be interesting if there was a way to do that, like a single throwback way. Maybe there's a title for a flotilla that says, hey, this can be your lifeboat. Your max speed is now 1, and you have you can have no defense tokens. But you can put your commander on board this ship. Wouldn't that be like? I'm not saying that I think that that's a good idea or a bad idea, but I'm curious, right? Would that be something that somebody actually wanted to do? You can take, Darth, you can take your Grand Moff Tarkin or whatever, put him on a Gazanti, but max speed is going to be 1, and it can have no defense tokens. Like, I don't know if that's even worth it. Like, would anybody want to even do that at this point? Especially if your max speed is 1, I don't think you'd never want your commander on a speed 1 ship. Heck, I don't even like my commander on speed 2 ships if that was possible. Dodonna Lifeboat was OP back in the day. Yeah, especially with Relay. When Relay was unrestricted. That's one of the things that made, these... And this is a cool thing. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's one of the things that made the old flotilla system so broken. And that's why I take these certain approaches, because if you look at some of the titles that are out now, we've seen this with the Venator. And of course, we've seen it on the Architans. You have certain titles that mimic the old Relay rules, right? Like, hey, when somebody else activates a squadron, it can be within range 1 to 2 of you, even if it's not within range of the person who activated. I'm like, oh, okay. So that's kind of like the unlimited Relay that we used to have, but it's on a much more expensive ship, and it's also limited because of the uniqueness of the title. So I like it when they kind of give you a fun mechanic back in a limited dose, because some of those old mechanics were fun, and I liked that. Yes, and honestly, people would just target the lifeboat straight away. I agree. John says, with the new pass token mechanic, we could possibly balance the introduction of additional flotilla types combat support by giving your opponent a pass token. That's a really good idea. I like the way that, I like your thought process. Well, that's a fantastic idea. I think that's a good, I mean, pass tokens are really cool. They're one-time use. I used my first pass token in 1.5 today, because every other time that I have played, which hasn't been that much since lockdown, but when I have played, we've either had the same number of ships or just one different, and then it was the first player, negated the one that would have been given either way. So I haven't had any pass tokens and had the opportunity to use them before today, and I did. I got to use some today, and I was great, because there was like one important turn where I had 2 pass tokens where I had to activate a ship, then I passed. I had to activate a ship, then I passed, then saved the most delicate ship for last. It survived, and then we were in the thick of things. I didn't need pass tokens any more than that, so like just that one turn, it really helped. And so like I feel like pass tokens, the implementation of how they did pass tokens are excellent. I really like that. Yeah, exactly. The pass token is one of the most elegant, thoughtful mechanics I've ever seen. It truly makes the second player a viable strategy. Absolutely. I actually had a pretty good bid today, and I bid for second player in this particular match I'm talking about, because I was playing Radis, and I was going up against another Radis fleet, and so I didn't want to have to drop my Radis first, and then my opponent counters me. So Radis versus Radis is one of those times where you would prefer to be second player, and it worked because he had more ships than I did also, so that's where I got the 2 pass tokens from. It was a nice fleet. So I think, yeah, maybe a flotilla, like, I don't know if it's 2 out there, but maybe just a thing. If you want to take more than 2, you have to give your opponent a pass token, or maybe 2 pass tokens to go beyond 2. I'm not sure about all of those things, but that is one idea. I do like the idea of, as we get different types of flotillas, maybe a title that says this one, like a unique title. This ship does not count against the limit. Or maybe we even just have a rules upgrade that says only 2 of a specific type, and then they go back and they errata the GR75 and Gazantes as support flotillas, and then like you're talking about different ones like combat flotillas, and I mean, I'm not sure if there's if there's another one besides combat and support, maybe a recon flotilla or something like that. There could be. I mean, that's still support. Combat and support are the main ones, but you could have a third type of ship maybe. If there was some type of objective thing, like a ship that had no weapons and had no, it was out there almost for decoration, but I don't know why you would want to do that. So again, I'm just brainstorming, and that's kind of what this show is about. Sometimes you just throw things out there, throw a bunch of ideas at the wall, see what sticks, and that's kind of that's one of the main goals here, is just to talk about these things. But Recon Scout, yeah, I was thinking something along the lines of maybe being able to kind of look at somebody's top command dial from a distance. I know that's Yasani Asard's never used ability, but stuff kind of like that deep space listening ship Gazanti that we saw in Star Wars Rebels. Could do a mercy mission type of thing, a ship with its own mission. Yes, that's I mean, they've certainly done that in Star Wars Legion. One thing we're definitely going to see more of, and that's similar themes across all of the Star Wars miniatures games. They started doing that a little bit with FFG, and AMG is all about that, since they don't usually have dedicated developers for just one game. They kind of work collaboratively, and with Luke Eddy being kind of like the godfather of Star Wars right now at Atomic Mass Games, you're probably going to see a lot of mechanics that exist in Star Wars Legion make their way into Armada and X-Wing, and kind of all around, because they're all coming together. They work collaboratively. So I think the Mercy mission was kind of like an idea of that reminds you of Secret Mission, R2-D2 and Padme Amidala have. So things like that will happen. We've already got Scout, where you can have like certain squadrons deploy kind of out there in the middle of nowhere. We've got that. It's called Infiltrate and Legion. So that's something we're going to see more of. I think that's definitely a viable thing. But yeah, so I think that's most of it. I'm curious what you guys think of maybe medium or large flotillas. I think if they were to do that, they'd have to clarify some things in the rules, like what happens. We know that when two flotillas ram each other, they still both take damage. But what happens, if a medium or a large flotilla ram a small flotilla? Is it still the same thing? I mean, I think it would be. But what happens? We know when a regular ship, a non-flotilla ship rams a flotilla, the non-flotilla ship doesn't take damage. But what if it's a large flotilla? What if you were to come out with a large flotilla that's like, a Nebulon, a CR-90, a GR-75, and a Dornian gunship? Like Rebel Strike Group Alpha. Like it would look really cool, and I love the idea of things like that because it gives you the opportunity to get lots and lots of models on your tabletop and kind of really immerse you in that, like the Battle of Endor type of thing. Because let's be honest, a standard game of Armada, the 400 points, where the game is kind of designed and based off of, it's never really felt like you had an Armada to me. Not at the 400 point level. I think when you get into like over 1,000 points, that's when it starts to feel like you have a true Armada. But and that was one thing I did like about flotillas, because you could really have a lot of ships on the board and have this epic experience. And of course, you can always homebrew it. You can play casual format and run as many flotillas as you want, to do that. But then again, you can also just up the points. If you're doing that, like you just either up a little bit to 600 or 800 or 1,200 or 2,000. I've played at just about every points value. And those really long games, like 2,000 points, I don't know if I want to do that again, just because it takes forever. But so larger flotillas could kind of emulate that a little bit, because you could get maybe a Nebulon, a CR-90, and a GR-75 all on the table at maybe a discount to running them all individually, because maybe they're not quite as powerful if they were all attacking separately, but maybe you got like all of their dice that they would have had like -1 or 2 or something to that effect. But it's still nice because they're all now in unison firing together. Like that would be a cool thing. I'd love to see something like that. But yeah, so that's some of my ideas. But the coolest one I think would be to have an upgrade that goes on a ship. That support container, that basically debris container that when you get shot, you can drop it off. It falls down. You drop a token. Next turn, the token assembles into a Trident class assault squid flotilla, just like how the Separatists did their attack on Camino. I think that would be a really cool idea. That would push you past the limit, but it would have to be an expensive upgrade, and it could only go on a ship. And so like there's ways to definitely limit that. But it could be if you took 2 squids already, and then you like had 2 more munificence with this upgrade, and then drop that, you could potentially have like 4 flotillas at one point. It wouldn't be a list building thing, because you'd warp them in mid game, like from outside of the game. And since you're doing that, you wouldn't be able to put upgrades on them, right? So Jason says, I'm still pretty new and don't want to sound dumb, but going back to new flotilla mechanics and the scout ship, what about something like a target lock, like an X-Wing, adding a die maybe for an attack? There's something kind of like that. The easiest way that I can think of to do it would be there's an objective where you put down where there's targeting beacons, and if an enemy ship is within like distance 1 to 2 of a targeting beacon, then your ships can re-roll up to 2 attack dice when attacking that ship. So it could be that you have a ship that he gets to drop, like maybe he's got 2 charges on it, he gets to drop 2 targeting beacons throughout the course of the game. I don't know if they'll do something like that exactly, because that does mirror an objective pretty closely, but that's another really cool idea. Jason says a dedicated intelligence gathering flotilla that'll issue a penalty to one of your opponent's ships, -1 movement, -1 dice, what have you. Yeah. I mean that could definitely work. I feel like Slicer Tools is kind of doing some of that stuff too, but you like I feel like it fills that role, especially if you run the suppressor with Slicer Tools. and you know, it's a ship that's kind of getting in there and just hindering your opponent. It's like nerfing your opponent. I think they could probably do something a little bit more along those lines. And it could have some of those same upgrades. You know, there could be more fleet support that does some of that too. The only thing I worry about with things like that is, you know, if we're adding buffs or nerfs or any type of persistent effect that's going to stay on an enemy ship, then we kind of have to make more and more new tokens. And then at a certain point, you know, like we overwhelm the game with tokens at a certain point. What do you think the chances are for getting the consular class for Epic in X-Wing? I'd say like 90% chance. I mean, it's on the Epic artwork, and you know, they're not going to make a separatist Epic ship and not make a Republic Epic ship. So I think there's a very, very good chance of getting a consular class, because there's artwork. You know, it's in the artwork, and it makes the most sense. Well, I think that's going to do it for tonight, guys. I want to kind of wrap things up a little bit. If you haven't already, check out the links that we have down in the description. I'm now on TikTok. I've been doing some stuff on TikTok. We are also on Instagram. We've got all of that stuff going on, Twitter and Facebook. If you guys haven't already, check out Luxury Playstyle. We've got our link for that and discount code Crabbok VIP. You know, we're Legion tokens are going to be coming out soon. There's some more X-Wing tokens getting ready to get announced. So cool stuff like that. I'm still pushing towards doing Armada tokens too. So we'll have to see how that goes. I know there's a lot of people that ask me about Armada tokens for Luxury Playstyle. I would love to do them. I would love to have metal tokens, high quality metal tokens. I'm talking like, you know, defense tokens, double-sided command tokens. Or so you have, you know, you got your 4 command tokens and their raid tokens on the other side. Would love to do that. Are you drinking whiskey? I am. I'm drinking some Ardbeg. It's a very peaty whiskey tonight. So yeah, another great double crit. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you. I appreciate that, Jason. All right, guys. I want to thank you all so much for watching and hanging out today. Be on the lookout for some new stuff. Patrons already have access to the new tournament report from today's games. So check Patreon. That's all posted up on there. Also, if you guys haven't already, check out A Forgotten Dream. It's I posted on the community page today. It's our interactive role-playing game. You can play along. You get to help make the decisions and influence the story. And so I think it's going to be a very, very fun experience that we all play together. So check that out. All right, guys, I will talk to you guys later. I want to thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a great day.